channel. In today's episode, we have a very special sit-down interview with my good friend Amir, aka Aeron Nix, aka the founder of WrestlePlug. We discuss his footballing journey. Don't forget to follow Amir, follow his work on Twitter. He's a very, very successful graphic designer. If you need work done, I'll leave the links below here. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Back to the channel. Today we have a special interview with my good pal Aeron Nix. You might know him from WrestlePlug. You might know him from beating up genuine wankers on the British wrestling scene. You might know him from fantastic graphic designing. You might know him from fantastic wrestling interviews. It's a pleasure for him to be on here. It's a pleasure for me to have him on here. So basically today, we're just going to go through your football journey, your ups, your downs, your roller coasters, your emotions, all that. We just really want to hear your story because you've obviously been through many good stories in football. You've had bad stories, good stories. So we'll start off with when you were a youngster. What was your earliest memory of football, both at maybe watching at home and at a ground?
Thanks for having me, buddy. I've known you for a long time, so you already know my story. But for the sake of people, I'm not just a wrestler. I'm not one-dimensional. I'm one of these people who just loves wrestling. I love football. Football has always been my life, and I'm old as well. You know, I'm in my mid to late 30s now. So my first kind of experience of football actually was 1989. I saw highlights of Arsenal beating Liverpool in the final day of the season, 2-0, Michael Thomas, which Liverpool fans all remember so well. And they were so close to winning the title. Unlucky. And I remember watching that and thinking, that's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. Like I didn't understand it, what was going on, why are they kicking a ball into a net. But I was 4 years old, and literally that was the one game that hooked me. And I remember saying to my mum, like, I want to be an Arsenal fan just because they had won in it. So it seemed like the natural progression when you're a little kid. It was like, Arsenal were good. They won the titles. I'm going to support them as a glory hunter. Not realising they'd be, very up and down, and it would cause me a lot of distress as I got older, but it was what it was. But I'd always knew that because I was born in Lincoln and then moved down as a little kid. And so once I got into football, about a year or two after that, I was still tiny and didn't know sod all. All of a sudden, I remember seeing like Lincoln City playing, and obviously they were rubbish. And some people still say we are a tin pot club and all that nonsense. I remember seeing Lincoln and thinking, and my mum, I remember specifically my mum saying, "That's your local side," and I was just like, "Oh, cool, I'll support them then as well. Like, I'll keep an eye on them." But because you can't get to Lincoln, because obviously when you're a kid, you don't realise that a 3-4 hour drive is just that. You think it's like, that could easily have been on Mars as far as I was concerned. So I was like, well, I'm not getting up to Lincoln. I had a really poor family as well. Like, we lived in pretty much poverty. So there wasn't any money. I couldn't go and watch any football. Literally all I had was match of the day highlights. And then I used to watch old reruns of Match of the 70s, which I loved because it used to get me into Arsenal's old football with guys like Alan Sunderland and Bobby George and players of that, Frank McClintock. And there was so many different players running around, and it really helped boost my passion. Because from an early age, I was watching all the reruns of stuff. I picked up a lot of knowledge of football very quickly. And I loved football so much. I was just consuming all of it, more so than I even was wrestling, which I kind of started watching about a year after that. But football was always the number one passion. Arsenal was kind of like the first team, so to speak. Didn't really know any better. Thought I'll support Arsenal, and used to get ribbed at school. I remember when I was 10 years old, in 1995, I actually might have been when I was 11, 96. My mum brought a cake in to school. In fact, it was the last year before I went up to year 7, vaunted secondary school over it. And I remember my mum brought in this big Arsenal cake that I could share with all my mates at school. I say mates. And I just remember getting a ripping because my birthday was the day after we got knocked out of the FA Cup by, of all teams, Sheffield United. And yeah, like fucking, and also I shared a birthday with Peter Beardsley, so I used to think Peter Beardsley was fucking cool. Well, even though he had nothing to do with Arsenal. But yeah, like my football journey is obviously long. I don't know where you want me to start in terms of actually going. You know, my first game, it was actually because I lived in Portsmouth for most of my life. I'm one of these people that people are going to call multi-club wanker. So basically, I supported Portsmouth because they were the local team. And my first game was Portsmouth versus Southend in 1991, and they beat them 4-2 at Fratton Park in front of about 3,000 people. Back then, nobody gave a shit. To be fair, Portsmouth always had a great atmosphere, but for some reason, I remember that game being empty. I was in the South Stand upper, and that was like something entirely different. Until then, I had never watched it in person, and that was where, you know, like everybody, any football fan is worth their salt will tell you the magic kind of kicks in, and all of a sudden you realise what it feels like to see an actual goal in person, for people to kind of, you know, sort of jump on you and all this kind of different stuff. And when you're a tiny little kid, and you know, I was 6 years old, it was a wild experience. And then my first away game, not even a couple of years later, actually the same season, was Millwall away, which was quite the experience as a tiny kid. You know, you turn up and you're thinking it's just a game of football. You don't know the ins and outs, and then all of a sudden you hear, well, things that I can't really repeat even on this podcast, even though I do like to swear, and seeing grown men being launched 6 meters by uppercut and all this kind of stuff, and thinking, Jesus. Yeah, I remember I was like, I'd love to be able to say I was like really hard as a little kid and jumped in and thought it was fun, but actually I was fucking terrified, as you would be at that age. I was just unbelievably taken aback by, and that was the first time I'd really seen outside of my house any kind of like aggression or real kind of conflict between people. And that's what football brings as well, unfortunately. And you see it nowadays. In some ways it's progressed better. You can't really get away with that stuff now, which is good, but at the same time you've now got the social media aspect, which I'm sure we'll talk about. You know, and then football just kind of progressed from there. And as I got older, I started going to more and more Portsmouth away games, because I ended up playing for their juniors side, not the youth team, so to speak, but the juniors team. And which was kind of like, just, you know, I was a member of Pompey Junior Blues, and then we would kind of go to all these away games, and every away game we would link up with their junior side and play a game with them. And that's how I got into playing football. And I didn't actually really enjoy playing football for a long time. I hated it because I was this short little fat kid, and I was always playing at centre half, because that was the position no one wanted to play. So they were like, go in defence, you're fat, you can block the ball. And then, yeah, from there, it just kind of spiraled. I mean, I could literally sit here and talk to you for hours, mate, but if you want to steer it in a certain direction, please do so.
No, I just wanted to, you know, continue. You know, you can take as much time as you want. I just want to know, obviously, you talked a lot about your experiences with away days and stuff like that. Can you give me any memorable away days that you've had just over your years of following teams?
I'm very blessed. Even though we came from a poor family, like for instance, when we first started going to away games with Portsmouth, they were the first team that I really followed, so to speak. I never felt like I really was a hardcore supporter of Portsmouth, but I loved playing for the juniors team, and I made so many friends, so that was kind of why I was going a lot. And it was, for my mum, it was the only thing she could really provide me. She was like, look, you know, it only costs 2 or 3 quid for you to go and play. Like, it was £2 to get in. You know, at Fratton Park, £2 to get in. But you would cut out a little coupon in the news, in the local newspaper, take it there, give them 2 quid, and they let you in. A lot of times, they just would like lift you over the turnstile, and they wouldn't give it to us. And it was really cool. And my stepdad used to pick me up after work all the time. And yeah, it was a good. I've got a lot of love for Portsmouth. I've got a lot of respect for them, because their community and everything based there is fantastic. But as I got older and I learned to graft and work myself and stuff, I started going to, I basically spent all my money on football and wrestling. I didn't spend it on the simple stuff, the bills, the mortgages, things like that. I was more content to kind of live borderline homeless, but have all the experiences. And I started going to multiple away games. I mean, one of my favourite memories when I was young is going to Sheffield United away in 1990, I want to say 97 or 98, something around there. I'm sure some nerd will quote me. Go, actually, they weren't in the same division as Portsmouth. You know, I don't care, mate. I don't remember fully. I've taken many a whack to the head, to be honest, in my current profession. But I remember we were losing 1-0, playing like shit, as Pompey do away. And you all know John Westwood, John Portsmouth Westwood. Very famous. He's the wanker with the bell and the funny hand. Yeah. Ding, ding, ding. Bit short. Yeah, being polite, some people might say he's a little bit short in the head. And which is, to be fair, whenever I met him as a kid, he was very nice to me. And I still remember to this day, the fans were proper giving it. He was obviously off his tits, as he always was. He was a bit younger back then, and he just fucking whipped his fucking trousers down and got his cock and arse out and was proper going, fire, Pompey. And I was like, oh my God. And I was behind him, about 2 rows behind him. So I just got to see the full, you know, hairy black hole experience. So I was just like, you know, that was another thing that scarred me for life from an early age. I think being 10, 11 years old and seeing that, I was like, yeah, I didn't need to see that, bro. But thank you for that. But that was a kind of regular occurrence. That same season, we had Watford away, and halfway through the game, they had to abandon the match for half an hour because the Pompey fans stormed the home end and tried to start a riot with the Watford fans. And you think, what the fuck? Like, you know, and all because they were winding up the Pompey fans singing about bumblebees when it's gone. Of course, the Pompey fans were making gestures about Elton John's sexuality, of course, because he was a part director / owner, whatever you want to call it, at Watford at the time. I went to QPR as well. One of my favourite memories of QPR is Portsmouth having about 500 fans in the home end, because back then you could get away with that to a certain extent. You couldn't do that now, no way. And they had to abandon the match for an hour, and they had to bring in riot police because those Portsmouth fans just started an all-out war in the QPR end. And yeah, that was kind of my first experience of Loftus Road and that tight, compact stadium where you're just so close to the field. But it's not all terrible, violent memories. Wolves away, 97, the last game of the season. It was a good season for Portsmouth. They did really well. I think that's the season they got to the FA Cup quarterfinals, which was a big deal if you're a tiny little team. And that season, I went to Leeds away when we beat Leeds, who were in the Premier League at the time. And getting to see that was my first big cup upset. Getting to see Portsmouth beat Premier League Leeds away as well. And I just remember thinking, like, just such a unique moment, because it was like, we're small, we're dirty, we're the underdogs. You're this big, glamorous team with all these marvellous footballers, and we've just spanked you out of the cup. And it was my first experience of how much I love the FA Cup. And ever since then, the FA Cup has been one of the most important things to me. I think if you're an English football fan and you don't see magic or romanticism in the FA Cup, then frankly, I question why you're a football fan, because that is where the true magic is. And obviously, I'm going to talk about that later with my local side and everything I've gone through. But my first Lincoln game was kind of around that period as well. I went to see him play Port Vale in 96. And that was very cool for me. And also, the same year, my first Arsenal game, I went to see them play Everton at home, and they lost 2-1 thanks to Daniel Amokachi. I was like, and I was gutted. I was just thought it was like, oh, I'm at Arsenal for the first time ever. I'm in the North Stand. I'm having the greatest time of my life. To me, that was like going to Wembley. That was the mecca of football. And Bergkamp scored a free kick. This was the first season he was there. And my God, what a fucking player. And yeah, no, just... and then fucking Amokachi just ruined it for everybody. And I remember my mum getting excited because she liked Daniel Amokachi. I don't know if it's because she fancied him or something. But he also had Andre Kanchelski, players of that nature. So that was a good Everton side. Less said about Everton right now, the better, I guess. Yeah.
Awkward. Can't really go into context about Everton.
Yeah, I kind of feel sorry. I feel sorry for a little bit, to be honest, because they have got a good fan base and some great players. It's a shame that what's happening right now is taken away from what's going on the field. But yeah, no. And then it's just, I mean, memories of away days. Like I say, I am really blessed. I worked really hard. I was a postman as a teenager, and I worked 50, 60 hours a week with the sole intention of spending that money on going to watch my football teams. I say teams plural. It was always Lincoln and Arsenal. I got away from Portsmouth quite a lot as I got older. I just wanted to, because once I had money, I was able to zone in on the teams I actually supported. So sorry, Portsmouth, they kind of got the hoof. And I know people will call me bastard, but anyone who knows me knows that there's nothing I'm passionate about Lincoln. And yeah, Arsenal being the first love, I started going regularly. I went to Real Madrid when they beat them 1-0. That's one of my favourite games of all time, when Henry just tore away and scored. And I was in the Real Madrid end. It was my 21st birthday present. And my mum bought us like the VIP kind of seats in the middle bit. And ironically enough, they had overbooked tickets and there wasn't a seat available. So I just sat on a concrete step next to my stepdad who was in a seat. And because I didn't give a shit, I just wanted to be at the game. And I was sitting there thinking, remember, we lost to Blackburn the weekend before. And I just thought, they're gonna fucking ruin us. Like they're gonna do bad things to us. Like they are actually going to fucking drag us into a dark alley somewhere and do horrible things. I was terrified because I thought it's Real Madrid, mate. It's Ronaldo. It's Raul. It's everybody who was in that team, and Casillas and Beckham. It was the All-Star Galacticos. And Henry just breaks through and scores that beautiful goal and just runs away with his arms up. And I just, that's emblazoned in my mind, just going utter. And to be fair to the Real Madrid fans, because I was in there and they were pretty cool about it. They were just like, yeah, whatever. Like, it's a big day out for you guys. Enjoy it. And obviously that was the famous Champions League run as well, where we got to the final. I went to so many games after that. That kind of really spurned things on for me, because that was my first proper Arsenal away day that I remember being of any kind of meaning. And after that, I remember at the end of that season, I said to myself, right, I'm just going to dedicate myself to go into as many games as possible. And, you know, the 06-07 season, I went to a few more. I do remember, actually, a really good memory that most Arsenal fans won't give a shit about, when they were trying to capture 4th place at the end of that season. And you obviously remember the last ever game at Highbury with Wigan. But going into that, we had to win the 2 away days that we had left. And I went to both of those. We went to Sunderland away, and we had Man City on a Thursday because of fixture congestion. And I went to Man City as well. And I remember that, you know, being 1-0 down and struggling. And Jose Antonio Reyes had arguably the best game he ever had, rest his soul, for Arsenal, and scored 2 beautiful goals, including that absolute screamer in the top corner. And if you watch the highlights back, you can actually see me behind the goal. They zoom in on me and I'm going absolutely spare. And that was the first time I was on TV as well. And just like, you know, I don't really support. I still love Arsenal to a certain extent because of guys like yourself. All my friends support Arsenal, and I want them to do well for you guys. But I fell out of love with the club around 2010, 2011. I got fed up with watching a team that only cared about money. And I know the thing is, right, the state of football isn't fantastic, but I think it's made worse in some ways by the fans, and this will probably cop me quite a bit of abuse. But I think ultimately all the fans still have a choice. They can choose not to go and watch a big money side. And year after year after year, they take more abuse. And year after year, they're taken advantage of more. And especially at Arsenal, the cost of a ticket at Arsenal is disgusting. Now, when I was a kid, you know, I was lucky to get a tenner for my birthday, and that was like a gold mine to me. You know, that was worth something to me. That wouldn't even get you, like, that would barely get you a pie and chips at the Emirates now, you know. And it's sad that football is no longer a working class sport, and that's why I zoned in even more on Lincoln. And one of the other clubs actually that helped me transition, that's kind of where everyone's like, another team. My stepdad is a diehard Fulham fan, has been since the 60s. So I used to go, I didn't actually support Fulham, but I said to him, I'll start taking you to games. That sounds fun. I can't be bothered with Arsenal anymore. And I remember, you know, the infamous Europa League run to the final. I went to pretty much every home game that season with him, which was just magical. The season when they stayed up on the last day of the season against Portsmouth, went to a lot of those games. I remember Bullard's free kick against Villa. I'm very blessed that I was at so many different moments. I mean, you talk about Arsenal. If you name any famous game that Arsenal had between 2006 to 2011, I was pretty much at every game. You know, the Champions League game where Walcott skinned the entire Liverpool team alive, and then Adebayor did that stupid little fucking dance because he thought he'd done something to happen in the turds. Less said, I was at the Man City game with Adebayor. That's probably the most, if if people looked at every game I've gone to, they would definitely say the most famous game that I was involved in was that. Because unfortunately, I lost my head a little bit and was part of the rioting fans, which, to be fair, was a lot of us. And I remember Adebayo running the length of the field, and you just knew he was coming for us. You just knew he was going to come. And that's not to excuse a lot of the abuse that was being thrown at him. You know, I was sort of booing him and stuff like that, but I'd never used racial abuse, never, ever, ever used racial abuse, especially being mixed race myself. I have zero tolerance for racism in football, and unfortunately, it's a problem that I think Lincoln City has quite a lot of, due to its very kind of, dare I say, EDL roots and things of that nature up in Lincolnshire. And which is a shame because it is such a beautiful county, God's county, my mate likes to call it. And yeah, people would probably say the Man City game, but I mean, you know, I could, like I say, I could sit here all day. But the most famous away day for me is probably Burnley away with Lincoln in the FA Cup, because full disclosure, I just burst into tears. Like, I was just so overwhelmed by it. Because at the time we were in the conference, which will always be the conference to me. You can call it a National League all you want. It's always going to be the conference because I'm old school like that. And being Lincoln City and supporting Lincoln City all my life and having a season ticket for as many years as I have had now. And I remember, you know, 2 years before that, we played. So one of the most famous games Lincoln have had is Carl Shorten away. Carl Shorten Athletic, when they first got relegated to the conference. I think 2012, 2013, around that kind of period. And I remember losing to Carl Shorten 3-1. We had 13 fans in the away end. 13 fans went to the replay on a Tuesday night in Carl Shorten. So on my birthday, so I celebrated my birthday on the 18th of January, and that's how I remember it so well. I called Alan Power a wanker, and he shouted back at me something quite obscene. He probably he used a word that even I wouldn't use on this podcast. But it was a horrible, horrible performance. Like, it was the lowest of the low as a Lincoln fan. I don't think it could get lower than that. Losing to a bunch of plumbers from Carl Shorten who don't even play football full time is embarrassing. You know, especially when you're and you know, Lincoln City have never been a very historic club. I'm not naive like a lot of our new fans are. We've never been a famous team, other than a brief stint in the 70s with Graham Taylor, who of course is an absolute legend, rest his soul. And that kind of, you had to feel that. I always believe in, you have to feel pain and suffering and misery to enjoy the success that comes with grafting and, you know, moving on. And that was the lowest point I remember as a Lincoln fan, thinking, this sucks. Like, this is bad. Like, I'm still going to go, but just that abject misery, you know, going to places like we played Alfreton. Nobody even knows where Alfreton is. You know, nobody knows it. Like Guiseley, these kind of places. But with that, you get an education in proper football. With that, you get an understanding of what it means just to be, because you don't play for Guiseley or Alfreton because you're looking to be a star. You play for them because you just love football and you want to play football. And so I respect those teams a lot more. Welling away in the FA Trophy, you know, still one of my favourite away days. Beating them 3-1, great laugh. This is when the Cowleys had just come in, and you could feel there was a movement, and we were definitely going somewhere. And do you know what? I do miss playing in trophies like the FA Trophy. You know, if you're a football fan, you'll, for some reason, watching me rabbit on about football right now, go and watch games like that. Go and watch the FA Bays. Go and watch the FA Trophy, because that's where the real stuff is. Go and watch your Sunday leagues and your grassroots and things of that nature. Because first of all, you might see the next big thing. And second of all, it's cheap. You know, it doesn't cost sod all. Sunday leagues, especially, a lot of them, you can just rock up and stand on the side of the pitch and watch free football. And we all love free football. Don't be a fucking snob. Don't be a snooty bastard who wants to just support Arsenal, Man United, stuff like that. If you want to support them, that's fine. For instance, Alex here supports Arsenal, diehard Arsenal fan. Doesn't stop him playing grassroots, watching grassroots, covering it, doing amazing work. And there's no reason why a lot of you can't do that. And I always say this to people who say, why did you leave Arsenal? It's like, because I actually had the balls to say, F you, I'm not interested in supporting a team that doesn't give a shit that I'm there. That's only interested in pocketing my money because I'm a customer, not a fan. And for all the problems Lincoln City has had, and still has to, in some extent, with certain parts of their fans and that, you feel like a real fan. And also, our atmosphere is second to none. You know, we've shaken teams to their core. That's how we got that incredible FA Cup run. Obviously, Arsenal away is probably from a monetized standpoint, it's our most famous away day, but it's not in terms of our historical context. You know, Arsenal spanked us, and rightfully so. They kind of should do. We were top of the conference at the time, but we were the first non-league team in 103 years to get to the FA Cup quarter-final. That is massively historic. And then those wankers at the BBC the next season bring out their top 10 list of cup upsets, and we didn't even make it. Like, come on. It's just that's the ignorance. So even when Lincoln are successful, people still turn their noses up at us, but we like that. We like being underdogs. I love being in that pit. I love being at Central Bank. It's called LNER now because of the sponsorship, which is good. Money coming into the club. I'm not going to cry about that like a lot of our fans do, but it's still Central Bank to me. And, you know, I like that. It's like, oh, I've had my season ticket in the upper 7 for a number of years now. And people say to me, oh, you've only had your season ticket 5 or 6 years. I've never had to have a season ticket until now. Now we're selling out. Mate, when I started going to Lincoln, you could turn up on the door. You know, I went to Aldershot for my birthday. We played Aldershot at home. And fuck me, like, I think there was about 1,500 people in there. But, you know, it's just, it's very, very strange to see, you know, what people term as Johnny-come-latelys. I don't mind Johnny-come-latelys because as you get more successful, there's a natural progression. You're going to have more fans. For instance, with Arsenal, new stadium brings in new fans, stuff like that. You need that for revenue and also just to build the club. The problem comes when they just turn up because they're customers and they want the tourist day out. That's where the problem is. There's nothing wrong with them being there, but, you know, you've got to start somewhere. Show a bit of passion. Stand up. I'm quite old school. I fucking hate fans who sit down and don't make any noise. Simple as. I'm not going to move off of that. I think fans who sit down and don't make any noise, don't support their team, even when they're playing like shite, those people are toxic and don't deserve to be at football. They're not in the spirit of things. It's the equivalent of playing a competitive sport and throwing your toys out your pram and sitting down because you're refusing to play. You know, you get involved, you put whatever you have into what you are doing at all times. And I think that comes with just being a very passionate person. But yeah, to answer your original question about 10 millennia ago, probably Burnley away, Lincoln, any of those cup games. I went to every single cup game home and away that season for Lincoln, which was amazing. Good Lord, Welling away. But, you know, that's the thing about me. I try and love all of them and enjoy all of them. I loved going to Welling away just as much as I loved going to the Bernabeu. You know, I went to the San Siro when Arsenal beat Milan 2-0. I went to Porto when everybody rallied around Abue the week after he'd been booed against Wigan and taken off. Games like that mean something. When Abue came right over to me and hugged me and some of the other fans who were in the front row at Porto, just to say thank you and threw his shirt into that hand. And, you know, we loved him. I loved him. I thought he was a wonderful little player. You know, he wasn't the best player in the world, but he worked so hard and he was so passionate and he was just a lovely human being as well. Proper, lovely, wholesome Christian boy was Emmanuel Abue. You know, plus we used to sing "I like to move it" with Abue, which is always good. You know, I love that team and I love the diversity of Arsenal. It's just a shame that after a while I realised that I was just a customer. I was a consumer. I wasn't a fan. But like I say, away days, countless, mate. Real Madrid, you know, Porto, Standard Liège, Fenerbahce. I was very lucky. I went to a lot of European games. Olympiacos was incredible. Being one of only 5 fans who tried to get the train, walking right into the train station after the game, we lost 1-0. That was the game that Tom Cruise played. Not the Tom Cruise, obviously. And I remember he played at wing back. And halfway through the game, I just remember shouting, "Cruz, you're fucking shit," at the top of my voice. And the old bloke next to me goes, "Hey, up, mate, that's my son." And he was his dad. His dad was sat next to me. I was like, "I'm so sorry, mate. I'm just a bit, you know, I'm very tired. I've flown all the way to Athens to watch our youth team lose to Olympiacos." That was also the same game. There was an old woman, I'm not shitting you, she must have been like 80 years old, and she stood on her seat, proper ultra, with a full red tracksuit on, screaming Olympiacos songs. And at one point, I said something slightly obscene that you would do as a football fan to this woman, and she turned around and gestured that she was going to cut my throat. And when an 80-year-old woman's doing that, that's when you know football is a passionate sport, mate. And I had nothing but respect. But yeah, no, going to the train station afterwards, there was about 5 of us who were like, let's just get the train back in, because it's very much on the outskirts of Athens. It's quite a way away from where all the hotels and that are. And as we turn the corner, the entire Gate 7 Ultra is about 3,000 of them are in this train. This big old train, and they're all packed in like fucking chickens at a battery farm, and they're rocking the train going, whoa, with flares and everything. And I'm like, get a taxi, boys. Just no thanks, just left. And they're all just like giving us all the business and that. I experienced so much from being an Arsenal fan in that time. And Arsenal didn't really win sod all at the time I supported them, at least when I was going, but I still loved it. I still loved every single day of it. And it gave me such an education in football. And I got to see the world, which is really cool. When you come from a family like mine and you haven't got much to speak of, the idea of knowing, someone has said to me when I was a kid, you'll get to go to Belgium, you get to go to Greece, you get to go to Spain and France and Italy and all these beautiful places, Poland, even Ukraine. I would have scoffed at you. Not a chance. And then, there I am actually doing it. And that's kind of cool for me. And I never take any of that for granted. And even now when I go to, we got Gillingham away in a couple of weeks, which I'm hoping to go to. What a shithole Gillingham is. But I still love it. And I'll still take, I'll still take it in. I'll take every game in. And I enjoy it for what it is, because it's not a given. And it should be a privilege to see your football team, as far as I'm concerned.
I just want to, obviously you talked about a few players there, but overall in your whole football experience, who are some of the favourite players you've watched over the years and enjoyed?
Again, just like the games and the stadiums, I'm blessed to have seen some of the best. For me, I thought Iker Casillas was beautiful to watch. I always had a real soft spot for goalkeepers, because when I was a kid and I supported Arsenal, David Seaman, I still remember that save against Pesky Solido. That is, to me, the greatest save of all time. You can stick Banks up your arse, mate. Now, I love Gordon Banks, but for me, that's probably the greatest save that I've seen. Although Kasper Schmeichel certainly rivaled it in the Euros this year. I thought he was incredible, especially in that semi-final against England. He made some saves that are just out of this world. I love him. And I loved his dad as well. He was an amazing player. Casillas. Like when I went to that Real Madrid game, getting to see Ronaldo, Casillas, Raul, Beckham, they're all in the same team. And they're all arguably the greatest players of a generation. But as an Arsenal fan, seeing Bergkamp and Henry was different and special. I got to see Perez, Ljungberg, Vieira was exceptional. Absolutely phenomenal. I wanted him to knock Roy Keane's fucking Tadger off, mate. I hated Roy Keane so much. I got to see so many of those great players. On the flip side, going abroad, and I've seen Lionel Messi play. I've seen Cristiano Ronaldo play multiple times. One of the greatest strikers I ever saw, and Arsenal fans will wince when they hear his name, is Didier Drogba. Just truly special. Michael Essien. I remember that Chelsea game where Essien scored. Jesus Christ, it's in tatters. I think Mathieu Flamini scored in that game, who, by the way, is one of my all-time favourite underrated, ridiculous players, is Flamini. I thought he was phenomenal. He's just such an angry bastard. He reminded me of Gilles Grimond. He just kicked the crap, but he couldn't play football that way. He just kicked the crap out of it. I loved it. For me, one of the greatest players I've ever seen, actually, is Martin Keown, and people scoff at that. But if you can find me someone who cared more about winning a game than Martin Keown, I'll be impressed. I've never seen such fire and rage and determination in a player. Particularly as I went to that Man United game where he made Ruud van Nistelrooy shit his pants and run away, which was amazing, amazing. I still remember laughing my head off to this day. I loved so many players from Arsenal. I don't think Arsenal fans realise in the last 20 years how many special players they've seen. I thought Mark Overmars was special. Emmanuel Petit. Just an endless list of players that could have Tony Adams. And, I love the old school back four with Dixon and Winterburn and Steve Bold and Adams and Keown, and the rotation there with Seaman behind them. And it just, and then of course you've got Francis Jeffers up front. That's kind of ruined it a bit, but what it is. Poor old Jeffers with his big old FA Cup ears. I loved him though; he was amazing. I just loved all those players. You know, when you're a fan of a team, you see the passion, you see the good in every single player. Sean Raggett for Lincoln may not necessarily be on a lot of people's radars, but I don't think people realise how special he was in the conference and League Two. He was one of those players where you thought, this geezer should not be in our side at any point. What is going on here? A 6'3" left-footed centre back who can header the ball. He should be playing for England. Never mind Lincoln. And he was so special. And that season when we won the conference and went up, and obviously had such an amazing run as well with the cup run and everything. My God, he was an enforcer. You know, him and Alex Woodyard, who played in the middle of the park, they were two unstoppable players. It's difficult not to be all over the place because I've just seen so many great players, but the all-time favourite for me is Bergkamp. I've never seen a player play like Bergkamp. I was very blessed to have seen some of his very special goals. That goal against Bayer Leverkusen where he lobbed the keeper. That beautiful goal in Newcastle. Just the kind of thing that makes you jump up and down like a giddy kid. You know, when he scored, I was like, that's like just freaking out because I've never seen anything like it. You don't see stuff like that unless you watch Brazil on a Nike advert. You never see it on a field. And Bergkamp is, in my opinion, the greatest, purest footballer I've ever seen in person. The control, the calmness. Henry was like an electric rod, and you could argue that Henry's probably overall a better footballer because he was, you know, he scored more goals and he probably could create slightly more. But Bergkamp for me is the greatest number 10 style footballer of all time. His quality on the ball is absolutely untouchable. And that extends to well before he came to Arsenal, you know, playing for teams like Ajax and things of that nature. He was lights out, so dangerous and so beautiful to watch and so calming. Every time he got the ball, there was like a serene nature about it. He just kind of, everything would just kind. You could imagine in his head, he had the ability to slow down time and pick the pass he wanted, the vision and the way he would strike the ball. That goal against Bayer Leverkusen for me sums up Dennis Bergkamp in a microcosm because he could just panic or pass the ball off or whatever, and he just stops and he looks, and in a flick of a moment, he just flicks the football and it goes right over his head into the top corner. And you think that's magical. I don't want to give other teams too much credit, but I did think Cantona was very special. Got to see Cantona a few times. I also thought Tony Yeboah was fucking incredible. If nothing else, for his stonking ability. You know, he had a foot like a traction engine, as Alan Partridge would probably say. I just love players like that, those big, robust, meaty, hostile players who just twat it 40 yards into the top corner. It takes all sorts for football to be exciting. If everyone played like Lionel Messi, it'd be a bit boring because you wouldn't be able to enjoy the brilliance and the individual nature of how they play. So for me, yeah, guys of that nature, I mean, honestly, you could name them. And it was very cool to see someone like Raul. I know he was kind of on the back end of his career, but knowing that he was, you know, Raul Gonzalez, just lights out, just an absolutely amazing player. But yeah, the list is endless. Zidane as well. I've got to see Zidane. Obviously, got to mention Zidane. You know, he's only one of the greatest players to ever walk this earth. And yeah, he was another one. You know, you could argue that win against Real Madrid, a lot of them were kind of in the twilight of their career, but it still means so. I mean, you know, Zidane, for instance, I think he retired after that, didn't he? Because that was 05-06 season. So he went and played in the World Cup final. Nutted one of your boys and took his walk. So, yeah. I mean, we all want to nut an Italian right now, don't we, Mr. Delanzo? Let's be honest.
We had fun. Yeah, so just final question. What does football mean to you?
Life. It is life. And I always hear this term, it's just a game. And do you know what? It is just a game. But it's a very fucking important one. It is just a game, and I think there's, you know, we saw what happened with Christian Eriksen, and that makes you realise that it is just a game, and a person's life is much more important, and it should always be. By the way, to all the scummy fans and the England fans in particular who behave the way they have, you're a disgrace. You don't have a place in football, and frankly, if I saw you at a game, I'd have no time for you. And you know, the violence towards kids, the racial abuse on social media, I'll probably get some off the back of this. That's just how it works. It's disgusting, and it ruins what is such a beautiful sport. And there's nothing wrong with being fiery and passionate and swearing and things of that nature, but you must know where to cap it. You must know where to stop your abuse. You should never use personal abuse. You should never speak about someone's family. You should never be racist, use ethnicity, use race or creed of any kind. And people do, and that's a shame. But football is my life and has been for a long time. Wrestling is a big part of my life, you know, as a wrestler, as somebody who works in the business, somebody who's dedicated a lot of time to entertaining people from the outside looking in as well. But football is the heart and center, you know, the heart and soul. It's the centerpiece of what I've done in my life. And everything that has come with the emotional outbursts, you know, that's all been part of it for me. That's been my outlet. That's been my time away from life to be able to not even bother to reflect, just completely turn off and just support my team, and to be able to enjoy roller coasters of things of that nature. When I started watching Lincoln back in the 90s, I had no idea they'd end up being actually one of the more popular teams in the lower leagues in modern history. I thought we're going to be shit forever. And I'm okay with that because they're my team and that's my home. And I was born there and I'm so passionate about it, and I rabbit on about it to everyone who will listen to me about how beautiful our cathedral and our castle is. But that's exactly what football is to me. It's more than just a game. It's more than just being a fan of a football team. Being a Lincoln fan especially means that you are almost, it's home. It's my home. I get off the train. There's the experience that comes with it. The walk to Sinsel Bank, going up to the cathedral, which is a stunning piece of architecture, and just looking at it. Walking up steep hill, going to all the old shops. It's more than just I get to go and watch Lincoln. It's I get to drink in and breathe in the atmosphere and the passion of what is my hometown and what makes me who I am, a hard working class, you know, I'm a hard working class Midlands lad, which is what I've always been. You know, I have the southern accent, I have the northern mentality, very, you know, hospitable, and Lincoln defines that for me. And so that is for me what football should be. And it took me a long time on that journey, going to watch Arsenal and Pompey and teams of that nature, to realise what football truly was. But I did get there in the end, just like everybody else. And that passion, that international language as well. You know me, I love to go and watch Sevilla in Spain. I'm a big fan of Sevilla. I picked that up from going there as an Arsenal fan, and that was in 2008. And from that point on, I was like, I love this place. It's the most beautiful city in Spain. It's stunning. Still don't really have an Italian team yet. Probably going to pick Atalanta just because they seem to play good football, but they're quite small. So that's definitely my kind of thing. They feel like prime Fulham when they were in the Premier League, but for Italy. You know, when they were upsetting everybody and getting into the Europa League. That's my kind of thing. I like Atalanta. But it reminds me as well that it's cool to go and watch international football. It's great to go abroad. These people who never go abroad and never see football, you've got to do that. You've got to go and see it, because football is an international language. I always remember that Champions League final when Arsenal lost to Barca. And during the day, I went and sat outside the Eiffel Tower because that's just where everyone was. And the amount of people just like, come and play football with us, and just kicking a ball between Barca and Arsenal fans, having fun, enjoying it. You know, anyone can pick up a football and play football. That's so cool. You can't just go and play volleyball at your leisure. You can't play tennis at your leisure. You can't play badminton at your leisure. You certainly can't do dressage. You know, that's why the Olympics is such a disconnect for people, because so much of that is not a real accessible sport. Anyone can get their jumpers, slap them down as goalposts and play football. Anyone can do that. And that's what football means to me. It's a sport for everyone. It's a sport that anybody can enjoy, regardless of their background. And also, it's a sport that has more passion than any other sport in this world. And, you know, it does have a lot of shit with it. I'm not naive like a lot of fans are. Yeah, there's a lot of problems with it, particularly in terms of the fandom and the disgusting behaviour. Not only that, on the player side of things, the money is a joke. I could do a podcast with you dedicated to just how ridiculous and abusive the power is. But that's just part and parcel, unfortunately, of corporate greed. And I suppose when you support Lincoln, you don't have to worry about that as much. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't bother me when I watch a team like Arsenal capitulate the way they do, because for all the problems that are at Arsenal, there's a lot of amazing people that support that team, yourself included. And they deserve to be able to watch their football team and enjoy the sport without having to worry about what some wonky cronky is doing from, you know, week to week. People should respect each other more, and if they did, football would have the same issues. But the problem is that the higher you get in football, the less respect you get, and that's disappointing. But I'll still support it, and hopefully I'll be an old, miserable shy bag sitting in the upper seven screaming at us when we're drawing 1-1 with Port Vale again one day, because no way are we ever going to be a Premier League side. So, you know, you can mark that down right now. Lincoln will never be in a Premier League.
Honestly, mate, it's been a pleasure having you on. Thank you for your time.
My pleasure, mate. My pleasure. Always a pleasure. Keep doing what you're doing. And if you're watching this channel, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, support what Alex is doing, because grassroots football is so important. I know Alex personally. Nobody is as passionate about football as he is, much more than I am. And as you can tell, I love my football. So support the grassroots. And like I said at the beginning of this podcast, go and watch your Sunday League teams. Go and watch your local team. There's a local team just up the road from me, Crowborough AFC. I now go and watch them play, not because I'm a big fan, but because they deserve my support. It's £8 to get in. It's poxy little Isthmian Premier South Division team. You know, they play in, I don't know, the Sussex League or whatever it is. Just go and watch them. Support the little teams, because one day you might want those little people to help prop you up. Same as wrestling. It's the only wrestling analogy I'll bring in here. Be nice to the people who are looking after you and helping you go up to the top, because one day you're going to have to come back down the ladder and you might see them on the way back down. And if you've been good to them, they'll look after you just the same way they did when you were going up as when you were coming down.
Exactly.